Hubler in Band of Brothers, and we all know what happened with Don in the Bastogne episode, but the actor who portrayed him did a wonderful job, and his name is Peter McCabe. Peter, please come on out. Les Hashey was a replacement who came in for Market Garden, and he's played by the talented actor Mark Huberman. Mark? Another replacement, and someone who has supported our foundation a lot over the past several years, is Doug Spain. And Doug, of course, played Tony Garcia. Doug? Tonight, Doug may want to take a selfie with all of you in the background. So just accommodate him when he takes his camera out. You got your camera with you? Is it with you? Okay, at any point you want to take that selfie, we can get the crowd and they can all smile like we're at a rock concert or something like that. It's got to be a surprise. Everyone has to look surprised. Phil Barantini is a good friend of the World War II Foundation as well, and he played Wayne Skinny Sisk. Phil? Nick Aaron did a great job playing Popeye Wynn in Band of Brothers, and for those of you who attended the events last night, he's also a very talented musician, so we welcome Nick Aaron, Popeye Wynn. Someone joining us for the first time is Tim Matthews, and Tim played Alex Pentala. Tim. Barkhouse Foley played Ed Tipper, and Ed had a central part in the episode in Carentan and was wounded severely, and Bart did an excellent job playing Ed Tipper, so please welcome Bart. Bart? And finally, from the Band of Brothers, Christian Black, who played Walter Hendricks. Christian, come on out. Christian's first appearance. One very special guest tonight played Ashley Pitt in the legendary movie The Great Escape. He also currently stars in the television series NCIS, and previously in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and Colditz, Mr. David McCollum. Thank you, David, for joining us. It's an honor. And I think we were talking a little bit last night that we believe David is the last living cast member from The Great Escape, which, when you think about all the stars who were in that movie, from Steve McQueen and on down, it's pretty amazing. So what we're going to do tonight is we have actually, in a way, he thanked me for being here. So I didn't know how to respond to that. I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm happy to be here. We're more happy to have you here. So we're going to start tonight. Because we have a lot of French guests and a lot of English-speaking guests, we're going to do a translation tonight. And Jacques, if you can hear me up there, if you could turn down the music a little bit more. Mr. Jacques, turn down the music a little bit more for me. That would be wonderful. All the way down. Nowhere, down. Nowhere.
Just stop altogether.
Coming down the corridor right now, the man who played Colonel Bob Sink in Band of Brothers, Mr. Dale Dye. questions with the actors, and then we're going to open it up to you in the audience to go ahead and ask your questions, because I know a lot of you have questions about Band of Brothers and The Great Escape. So we're going to begin with a couple of easy questions, and the first one I want to begin with is for Dale. And hi, Dale. Hi, how are you? That mic is on. It is on. Hey, you know, one of the interesting things you did for these guys in Band of Brothers is to put them through a boot camp. Could you talk a little bit about what that was like? And Eric will translate into French, and then you'll answer, and then Eric will translate again. So.
It was.
Hold on, Dale, one second. Eric's going to speak French first.
Okay, do French. Alors la question pour Dale, ce sera, vous avez travaillé beaucoup avec ces jeunes hommes, alors vous les avez mis dans un bootcamp. Pouvez-vous nous expliquer un petit peu l'expérience que vous avez eue avec eux, Monsieur Dale?
Well, we had a mixed bag of very, very good young actors. Some British, some American. And we knew that in order to properly convey or portray American paratroopers of Easy Company, first of the 506, second of the 506, 82nd Airborne Division, 101st Airborne Division, that we would need. I'm doing a new movie and it's all about the 82nd, but
very confusing.
We knew that just talking to them, just lecturing them, just demonstrating for them how things were done, how the soldiers lived, how they carried their weapons, how they wore their clothing, would be insufficient, because it was 1944. It was a long time ago. People thought differently. People related to each other differently. The weapons were completely different than anything you'd seen on the last bad war movie you saw on television. And so we decided that the way to accomplish this was to put them full immersion. For 2 weeks, they would live every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for 2 weeks, in the life and the relationship of World War II paratroopers. And so we rented essentially a camp at Longmoor, which is in UK, very near Aldershot, the home of the British Army. And we immersed them. We began with, well, let me see if I can explain it to you. Actors come to you generally with a lot of preconceptions. That's their nature, because they're little mimics. So the first thing we had to do was get all the crapola out of their head. And I have a very, very special way of doing it. I just wear their ass out, and that's what I did. Every morning we began with physical training, long runs, calisthenics, until they were so tired that all they really wanted to do was find a way to stay away from that old white-haired bastard. And then they become like dry sponges. You can teach. You can tell them to open their minds, open their hearts, open their emotions, and listen to these things and see how people react to each other. And when that happens, that sponge begins to get wet, begins to swell up, and they become the characters that they're trying to portray with a really, really deep sense of understanding. That's where we were going. It's a long answer, but that's essentially how we did it. Good luck with that.
Okay, Eric, it's your time to shine.
Alors voilà, il dit que quand ils ont commencé, Band of Brothers a été conçu avec des acteurs.
Boot camp like from an actor's perspective.
Alors pour Peter McKay, tu as été là depuis le début dans le bootcamp, alors c'était comment pour toi en tant que comédien?
Yeah, I mean, as Captain said, I mean, basically we turned up there with sort of the preconceptions you do as an actor, and really were just treated as just men who had to get on with the job and put down. And I don't know. I mean, I suppose the best way to describe it is that by the end of it, we weren't thinking in terms of putting on a film, such as basically working together as a group. It was quite an amazing experience, really. Something that I think basically has stayed with all of us for as long as it is today. Yeah.
Alors finalement, comme il dit,
And maybe how it changed you as an actor and as a person?
alors ton expérience dans Band of Brothers, comment ça t'a changé en tant qu'acteur et en tant que personne?
My experience, it kind of just made me a bit more of a humble human being, really. Up until we made it, and you know, you research what happened in the conflict and what people went through. You're not really thinking about it too much, you know. I'm sad to say, but after it just kind of just made me a lot more respectful as a person. You know, as a human being to other people, what they might have gone through. Everyone has a battle in their lives, you know, it just kind of really humbled me, I guess.
You learned, and you were the youngest cast member of Band of Brothers. What was your experience like?
Alors, même question pour Philippe. Toi, en tant que le plus jeune du casting, comment ça a changé ta vie ou ton expérience à toi?
Yeah, that's right. I was the youngest cast member, and I still am the youngest. My experience was, you know, I was sort of 17, 18 years old. I've been working on a TV show prior to that for 2 years, and I had 5 auditions for Band of Brothers, and it was, you know, it was a tough slog, and you know, you get the part, and then. Unfortunately, I didn't actually get to go to boot camp because I was working on the other TV show, and literally I finished the TV show I was on, and literally the day after I started working on Band of Brothers, and those guys had already been in boot camp. But thankfully, everybody sort of liked me, and sort of, that's one I know, I think, right? But the experience itself was just like nothing else I've ever experienced. You know, as a young kid, you know, you always dream of playing a soldier and that sort of thing, and then that dream became reality when I was working on Band of Brothers, and you know, most of the time that we were on set, it kind of, I don't want to say it felt real, because it certainly definitely didn't feel real to what the real guys actually went through, but you know, in terms of getting into character and things like that, it was tough at times, but you know, we've created an incredible bond between all of us, and we still stay in touch now. So we genuinely are like a real Band of Brothers. So yeah, it's changed my life.
Really about the soldier, getting into character, but learning about who he was, what he was all about, his history. Is that part of playing the role of a soldier, to make sure you get it 100% accurate?
Alors, Doc qui a joué Tony Garcia, est-ce que tu as eu la chance de rencontrer ton vétéran pour t'apprendre comment il était, comment il réagissait? Est-ce que ça t'a aidé à formuler ton rôle?
Hello, everyone.
Thank you for coming tonight.
This is going to be very difficult because now talking about Tony Garcia gets me very emotional, and just the mention of his name, that's how this series has affected me. He still lives here in my heart, and it's the only reason I am a part of this show is because of Tony Garcia, and the only reason I'm here today is because of Tony Garcia, and for that I am grateful. That's how he has affected my life. And I knew him for 5 years. I met him before I went to film, and I knew him all the way until he passed away in 2005, which was in the summer 2005.
Alors
And in the series, you were kind of also, you know, treated as a replacement. I mean, you weren't a guy who was there from the early episodes, so the guys who were there early on in the Toccoa and the Day of Days and Carentan episodes were the so-called veterans. So even as an actor, you were treated like a real replacement, correct? Eric?
Alors Marc qui jouait l'SHI, qui jouait finalement un remplaçant, il arrive plus tard dans la série, donc ils sont rentrés un peu vers la fin, ils vont rencontrer des autres acteurs qui sont finalement des vétérans de la série, et ils sont un peu traités comme les remplaçants à l'époque. Alors comment ça a été ton expérience avec ceci?
Yeah, it's funny, it's 18 years ago, and just when you think you've come to terms with being angry about not going to boot camp, this is my second reunion in 3 years and it all comes back. So I'm still really upset that I didn't get to go. And it was my second job, and the first job I did was a film in Dublin, and Robin Lane was on that job. Played Heffron, and we were both auditioning at the same time. We both got cast at the same time, we both realised at the same time we weren't allowed to go to boot camp. And we both begged, but no surgeon just told you couldn't go. And it did annoy me and still does, because there was something different, but that's the experience that Lester Hashi had, and that's what had to be mirrored, and that was the most important thing. And it's funny, I spoke to Lester a lot before filming and the beginning of filming, and I just thought that there when everyone was talking, his big thing was, why did they pick us? You know, so many men fought in that war, why did they pick Easy Company? And I kind of feel it kind of mirrors us, you know, why do we get picked? You know, and we're in this club of people who got to experience and be a part of a band of brothers, and it's kind of special. I remember Lester at the time, he was in awe, thinking, why, you know, there were lots of people who did incredible things in the Second World War, and he couldn't believe that he was going to be put on film, you know, he was very humbled by that, and I don't know, maybe, I don't know, that really affected him, before it even went on television.
Alors oui, pour Marc, c'est la deuxième fois qu'il vient à une réunion des acteurs.
An actor. Tim, I'm over here. Hey, come on. I was just relaxing over there and just thought I'd ask you a question. You played an actor that you never got to know at all because he was killed during the Battle of the Bulge, and we all know what happened during the Bulge. Did it bother you at all? Did you feel like you missed out a little bit by not knowing Alex Pincala?
Alors Tim, toi tu as joué un homme qui a été tué, on sait comment, à Bastogne. Est-ce que ça t'a ennuyé de ne pas avoir eu la chance de rencontrer cet homme? Est-ce que ça a affecté ton jeu?
Yes, it had a big effect, I think. I didn't feel... It's quite difficult to create an image of who this man was. And I was aware that other people were in touch with the veterans who they portray. Also, there wasn't much information about Alex Pincala anyway. In fact, Son's come to light quite recently, been contacted by his family. So it's, a lot of my feelings about the show have come later in life, really.
A lot better than Ed Tipper did in the Carentan episode now. Ed was horrifically wounded in Carentan, right close by to where we are right now. Many people didn't even think Ed lived. A lot of his fellow veterans thought he had died because of his injuries. Ed just recently passed away within the last couple of years. Did you get the chance to interact with Ed, and have you visited the spot here where he was so severely wounded? Eric?
Alors Bart, qui a joué Ed Tipper dans la série, on sait qu'il a été blessé grièvement durant la bataille de 40 ans. Même les blessures étaient si graves qu'on a cru qu'il était mort des années après. Malheureusement, il nous a quittés dans les derniers 2 ans. Est-ce que vous avez eu la chance de le rencontrer?
No, I haven't actually, not yet, but I have mentioned that I do absolutely want to go and see it. And I guess for me, the thing that sums up sort of the impact it had on my life being in this show was actually when Ed passed. It had been 1st of February, year before last, I think. Year before last. Well, February of last year. And I also got the chance to, before we filmed, I spoke with Ed on the phone. I spoke with him during filming as well, and I eventually met him at the premiere, along with his daughter, Kerry. And the biggest impact it had, the way I can explain it, is when I found out on the 1st of February that he had died. I've been in sporadic touch with Kerry, not so much with Ed. And it had a profound effect on me, actually. Tim, you called me in the car to tell me that he had died when I was driving. And after I spoke to you, I was actually on my way to a post-production session on the film, and I had to pull over and take 10 minutes to myself. It had such a profound effect on me. It felt almost like a part of me had died. It was a very trying moment, and that sums it up. How much it sort of, I felt like we were one person, and it's important for me to visit the spot where he was hit. But I mean, I remember when I met him as well. He despite the horrific injuries he'd had, his legs were in a terrible state, certainly in hospital. He just told me, I've just been skiing, and that was how tough these guys were, and how much so they were, and what they endured was horrific, and it takes real strength to get through it.
Translator.
Alors, il n'a pas eu la chance de voir le lieu. Alors, vous, pour Walter Hendricks, qu'est-ce que vous avez su sur lui?
Not a lot, actually. I think he died, from what the guys told me, he died about 6 months before we started filming Band of Brothers. And I was told a rather sad story about the fact that his grandson, I think it was his grandson, was reversing a car out of his driveway and knocked him down, and unfortunately he died. I never got to meet him. I know he was from Macon, Georgia. He started as a private, went up to sergeant, I think, but I'm not sure much more about him as a person.
Donc,
Question for you.
Ooh.
They don't have credit cards with them.
Oh, they do. How many of you have seen Band of Brothers more than 3 times? Please raise your hand. Keep them up. More than 4 times. 5, 6, 7 times. 8, 9. Yes, I'm gonna marry the one that wins. 10 times. Thank you so much. It boggles my mind how much you really love this series, and how much you really love these men. Not these up here.
You guys are
the men that whom we portray. It means the world. Thank you. Every time I come here, you guys really just shine a light on these men, more so than the series, I believe. Thank you.
Okay, Eric. There are a lot of people here who like Band of Brothers. We have a question in the back. I'm going to work my way. She's going to work. She's from the Free French, the FFI.
Free French from New York.
Yes, that combination. What is your question, and who is the question for?
Actually, I have 2 questions.
Uh-oh, a 2-parter. This is like a White House press conference. There's anyone. Anyway.
I've seen that many of the actors from Band of Brothers did get a chance to meet the person they portrayed. I'd like to know if Mr. McCallum had a chance, or if he knew people who had been in POW camps, or someone who had actually been able to escape during the Second World War.
Eric?
Alors, question pour M. McCallum. Comme les acteurs de Band of Brothers ont eu la...
I wanted to know when Hollywood is going to do something that includes, doesn't have to be only about, but includes the role of women in the Second World War. You had not just the nurses. You had British female pilots, you had American pilots flying planes over to England from the factories and stuff, or the wax, the waves. Is there any possibility of them doing something that would show the women's role?
Sure. Eric?
Alors la question c'est, Captain, quand est-ce que Hollywood va montrer à l'écran, sur un film de la Deuxième Guerre mondiale, le rôle des femmes dans la Deuxième Guerre, non seulement les infirmières, mais aussi les WAC, ceux qui ont volé les avions, tous les rôles importants qu'ils ont joués. Quand est-ce qu'on va voir un film qui va démontrer le rôle des femmes?
Well, young lady, I wouldn't hold my breath. if there's ever going to be a shot at it, it's going to be in the next year or two, with the Me Too generation and so on and so forth. There is a huge knee-jerk in Hollywood right now. And the best thing you can be is a 28-year-old female screenwriter or director right now. They're screaming to do those stories and kind of make up for all of the horror that you hear about every day in the tabloid press. So I think there is a chance, yes. The subject has been explored a bit with Rosie the Riveter things, but they haven't done, for instance, the WASP, the Women's Auxiliary Transport Pilots. So I think there's a great deal of those stories that will be told. How they'll be told, whether they'll be told well, depends. I don't know the answer to that. I know that in my next film coming up, I have interesting to see your costume. I have a female resistance fighter here in Sommer Glace, as a matter of fact, who kills a German at close range, and I'm tremendously sexually stimulated by that. But anyway, I think it's a great question, and I probably should have said that, and I apologize. But I think the time is coming for those stories, and it's just a perfect deal right now. It's a perfect storm for females in Hollywood.
They need to be told, but not like G.I. Jane. They need to be told the way they work.
Yeah, and that's something I don't really have a lot of control over. I'm hoping that they'll do a good job, and they'll do a respectful job, and they'll point to the importance that females play, both at home and overseas, in uniform and out of uniform in World War II, because it was a vital role, a pivotal role. Whether or not the young men and women who are writing it and will direct it and will portray it do it properly is a question I just can't answer. I hope so. Eric? Yeah.
Most.
How many people?
How many people have been to Bermuda here?
So, to answer your question, if you're waiting for it to happen, you're going to be waiting a long, long time. The best way to do it is to make it happen yourself. Either find writers, female writers. We are producers ourselves up here, and sometimes you just have to go and make it yourself, and it seems like you're well-versed in all those female soldiers who were involved in the Second World War, and that's my first step. That's what I would do if I really wanted to see these stories told.
Good advice.
Alors, si vous attendez qu'un film se fait, vous allez attendre très très longtemps. Le meilleur avis qu'on peut vous donner, c'est si vous voulez faire quelque chose, faites-le vous-même. Il ne faut pas attendre. Alors, il faut avoir des histoires, rencontrer des producteurs, et comme eux ils font, ils ont des projets, ils les font, il ne faut pas attendre demain.
Another question from the crowd. Yes, people from Philadelphia.
Ooh.
Now, you're from Philadelphia. I'm from New England, so this is not going to end well. Sean, what's your question?
Quick question for, I guess, the whole cast. You play paratroopers. Have any of you done an actual static line jump? I know Roth did the event a couple years ago from 10, 15,000. Has anybody done a real static line jump?
Alors ceux qui ont joué dans la série, dans tous les acteurs espionneurs, vous avez joué des parachutistes, est-ce que vous avez vraiment sauté d'un static line? So,
Christian, what was that like?
Sorry, I didn't hear I just heard static line, I didn't hear much of the question.
You did a static line jump. Yeah, 2 years ago during Jumping for Heroes event. What was it?
It
like?
wasn't for that event, but I have done one. It was when I was 18 years old.
Okay.
I just did one for fun.
Was it terrifying?
It was pretty scary, but I was pretty nuts when I was 18, so I was kind of up for anything. I jumped from 3,000 feet, and it was basically exactly what we trained to do on the movie, where you jump out the door and arms across the chest or whatever it was, and then you basically jump out and the thing just pulls behind you and it opens as you exit the aircraft. I can't remember the counts and everything else that we did, but yeah, for the movie maybe, but yeah, obviously it's a little bit different now.
And
We've
it was
moved on from them, but yeah,
was
it's
dark.
pretty much the same thing we were portraying in the film, but it was a long time ago. I was 18 when I did that, and I think I was 23 when we did Band Brothers. But I also skydive as well, so I've kind of moved on to doing that since.
It was interesting to get the guys ready for Band of Brothers and the parachuting sequences and that sort of thing. We were very fortunate to be able to get the #1 parachute school for the British Army at Bryce Norton, RAF. And so I took them up there and ran them through ground school and the swing landers and 85-foot descender and a number of other things. I'd been through all of that. I'd been through the standard jump course at Fort Benning, a 3-week deal. But I felt, and I still feel, that was one of the high points of their training. They really, once they were standing up in the door, despite the fact that they didn't have the prop wash and so on and so forth, they got that intense feeling of what those guys had to do to get out. And what you want to remember is that in World War II, they were jumping C-47s from one door, left side door only. Now we tailgate 130s and 141s, and we've got blast screens and various other. They didn't have any of that crap. And they were jumping the old round canopy T5s. Then there's no, you have to buckle yourself into the parachute harness, and there's no give to it at all, no stretch. So the initial opening shot was bad, always bad, no matter whether you went from a standard 1,250-foot AGI, AGL or not. And the interesting thing about the jumps on D-Day, as many of you know, was that the Germans had taken the C-47s under fire, and the pilots were beginning to dodge and weave and break formation, and they were all over the place. We have a documented altitude that I think the lowest jump was 100 feet. He got out of the aircraft, and, that's pop and drop. He just barely deployed and it creamed in. But they were jumping from all altitudes, all airspeeds, as the aircraft began to try to dodge ground fire. So it was a unique experience, and one that we had to kind of push back to the 1940s in techniques about the standard jump commands and so on and so forth were slightly different. And certainly the way they carried them out was slightly different. So I felt that we really had to do that. And I can't even remember what question you asked, but there you are.
Word for word.
Alors, ils ont eu la chance de...
Bonjour. How are you? How have you been? Well, how was your trip? You want to ask a question?
Hello, everybody. My name is Maria. I know a few of you already. Hi, guys. I have 2 questions in one. First of all, I wanted to thank Captain Dale Dye and Mr. David McCallum for their service, and for you guys for training the people in service. Okay, the question is, first, when you did the boot camp exercises, were they the same ones as during World War II? Or did you do your own mix to get them all riled up? And the second part of the question, that's for you, sir. The second part of the question is to you guys. I myself, I'm an American and Spanish citizen, and I was doing the Navy ROTC when I went to college because I wanted to become a Marine. And so I went through mini boot camp myself. And because of medical reasons, I got diagnosed with an illness. I couldn't go through becoming a Marine, which was my dream. However, thanks to going through mini boot camp, that's the reason I'm alive today. When I was diagnosed, they gave me 3 years to live, and I said, no, if I've gone through boot camp, I can survive anything, which I have. And so I wanted to know for you guys, the one that went through the boot camp, has that helped you nowadays or after Band of Brothers, when you've gone through tough situations, know, hey, if I went through that, I know I could do this?
Alors,
Who'd like to take the second part of the question first?
Take the second part, right? Alors, pour la jeune demoiselle qui voulait s'entraîner à devenir une US Marine, elle a fait partie d'un mini bootcamp, alors un mini camp d'entraînement, et malheureusement, à cause d'une maladie, il fallait qu'elle arrête. Et elle dit que ce mini bootcamp, c'est ça qui l'a gardé en vie. On lui avait donné 3 ans à vivre et elle a surpassé ces années. Donc, elle se pose la question si pour les acteurs, ça vous a affecté le côté positif de faire un mini bootcamp avec Dale Dye.
Who'd like to take that one? Maybe Nick or no? Tim?
First of all, I mean, what an amazingly courageous story. Thank you for sharing that. I think maybe I speak for all of us when I say this. I think we all struggle a bit with the fact that it was only 11 days. What I mean by that is, as intense as it was, it's not the full experience that people in the military go through. So, you know, obviously, I would defer to somebody who's actually been through the proper experience before answering that question with any authority. However, yes is the simple answer. I definitely do have periods where I am reminded of the fact that I hated most of it, and I survived it. And by the end of it, actually, I even liked Dale. So, it's definitely had an effect, yeah.
Alors oui, comparé aux hommes qui ont passé un vrai bootcamp à l'époque, ces acteurs n'ont fait que 11 jours finalement. Mais alors, ce qu'il dit, c'est est-ce qu'il y a eu un effet positif sur leur vie? Oui, et la réponse. Même qu'il disait que tous les gens qui étaient dans le bootcamp, ils détestaient ça. Hein, mais à la fin, il était content de l'avoir fait, et même qu'au final, il aimait bien Dale Dye.
I just want to add that recently Rick Warden organised a little trip, and we went back to boot camp for the first time. The guys that were there, and Phil came as well. We went back there, and I think everyone was I pretty much speak for everyone when I say this. We were all buzzing. We were really excited to go back there. I drove past it quite a lot, and every time I've driven past, I'm like, yeah, you left. Guess we went to boot camp. All happy. But when we went in those gates, and when we saw our dormitories, and we saw our actual beds, and we sat on our beds, I felt terrible because I realised that it sucked. Memories flooded back. It was horrible. We had a tough time there, and there's no denying it. But if we didn't have a tough time there, I don't think that we would have portrayed the guys as well as we did. But yeah, so yes, it definitely helped. I mean, it's probably nowhere near as tough as yours or any person serving, and we would never, say that anything of the like. But for us as actors, going in, with soft hands, it was tough. But it was necessary and it was needed. Like the captain said, it enabled us to get to a long, arduous shoot. When there were moments when we all struggled in boot camp. But to come through it made us even stronger, I guess. But yes, it sucked.
Alors, il n'y a pas longtemps...
1940s training, or did you guys add some new wrinkles to get the guys in shape?
Alors, pour le bootcamp, parce que Dale, est-ce que vous avez créé quelque chose des années 40, une réplique, ou est-ce que vous avez formulé votre propre bootcamp?
Well, first of all, congratulations on your courage, your tenacity, and your wisdom in choosing the United States Marine Corps.
Yes.
To the extent that we could, in the 12-day training schedule that I had and that we had written, we tried to include everything that a young soldier going into basic training and onto airborne training would have gotten in the early 1940s. But because the time was so compressed, I had to add a lot of Marine Corps flourish, which you probably know, it just means I knocked the hell out of it. Because we had such a tight time that just doing the basic things that a young recruit would have done joining the Army in the 1940s would have been insufficient. So we really had to press, and they worked night and day. They worked about 16 hours a day and slept, if they slept at all. It sort of depended on whether they pissed me off or not that day. So we had to add some new wrinkles, but I tried to keep it all in the context of what an airborne soldier would have gotten in the early 1940s. Carry on, hurry up.
And one of the most emotional moments for me watching the show was the discovering of the Landsberg concentration camp in episode 9, I think. And what I wanted to ask, as Israeli and as a Jew, what was it like for you guys? Anyone wants to answer? During the shooting of that episode and moments, and in general, about the history knowledge that you guys had. Was it something that you guys know? It was something new to you guys? That's what I'd like to know.
Alors, Monsieur Doudou, qui nous vient d'Israël, voulait poser la question. Une des épisodes et des scènes qui l'avaient touché était l'épisode 9 où ils vont libérer un camp de concentration. Je voulais savoir des acteurs, quelle était votre réaction? Est-ce que vous aviez connaissance ou des idées à cet épisode?
Phil.
I remember the day that we filmed that particular, those particular scenes, and what the way they did it was we every day we would arrive on set in our cars, and we'd get dressed and we'd be in character. But on that particular day, they sort of didn't tell us anything about the set or anything at all about what was going to be happening. And they also didn't tell us that they were going to be filming us as we drove in the jeeps in character to the set. And when we sort of came around the bend and saw the set and the concentration camps, it was those reactions that you see on film are real, because it felt real, and it was incredibly emotional. And yeah, I feel like I'm getting upset now talking about it, but yeah, it was horrific to see that, but knowing in the back of your mind that they were all actors, and yeah, it was tough. It was tough. Anyone else want?
I mean, you want to translate that?
Donc, il disait que le matin, quand ils ont tourné ces scènes du camp de concentration, les acteurs sont arrivés comme tous les jours en voiture, ils se sont habillés, maquillés, et la production ne les avait pas avertis de qu'est-ce qu'ils allaient voir cette journée-là. Donc, ils ne leur ont pas dit non plus qu'ils allaient placer des caméras dans les camions et les filmer quand ils vont tourner. Ils vont voir le camp de concentration pour la première fois, donc ces réactions sont réelles. Et Phil, il dit, voilà, c'est encore un moment qui le choque énormément. Il dit, oui, effectivement, c'était un moment très émotionnel pour tout le monde.
I think most of us basically knew about the situation with Jews in Germany during the war, in Poland, in the ghettos, and that sort of thing. But when you see it recreated, it's different than reading it on the page. It had an enormous emotional impact, and something that most people don't know about Band of Brothers is those emaciated, thin folks that we hired to be the concentration camp inmates. So many of them were very sick. Some of them terminal cancer patients and a number of other things, because we needed people that were that emaciated in order to recreate that impact of the starvation and the overwork and the inhuman way they were treated. And it was difficult. It was very difficult to find folks who could pull that off and just be in that absolute zoned out stupor when the Americans arrived. Ross McCall, who plays lead guy in the series, and who was a character who was supposed to be able to speak a little German. As the guys pointed out, none of them knew, none of them had seen this before we brought them up, because we wanted to get their reactions, their true reactions to the horror of it. And Ross, the hardest thing he had to do was when I arrived and with a doctor, and we told them that we cannot feed them and we can't give them water because their system won't take it. He almost cried when he had to translate the German words and say, no, you must go back inside. We'll help you shortly, but we can't help you now. Of all of the really emotional things we had to do in Band of Brothers, and the emotional buttons that were touched by all of us, I think that particular episode and that scene where we arrived at the concentration camp was probably something that will stay with me forever. And I'm glad at least we got to recreate it a bit.
Alors pour l'épisode, il dit que tout le monde savait qu'est-ce qui s'est passé.
To places like Normandy and Bastogne, because you filmed Van in England. So for some of you, this is your first trip to Normandy, and we were in Bastogne a few years ago. So what is it like to be able to walk the ground and see the buildings and meet the people and see the hedgerows and experience these locations for the first time? It must kind of bring it all full circle for you.
Alors pour les acteurs, pour vous, c'est comment de venir à des endroits où que ces hommes ont combattu. Bon, la Normandie, on a été à Bastogne il y a quelques années ensemble. Parce que vous avez tourné la série en Angleterre, donc c'est comment de voir ces lieux, pour vrai, des vrais lieux et les gens que vous rencontrez sur la route. Comment ça s'est fait?
When you invited us to Bastogne, December 2016, I had been talking to Mark about this because he didn't go, but being there was, I almost felt like I wish I would have been there prior to filming, just to capture the essence, because you could feel it. You could feel it in the air, and just seeing the distance between where they were and the Germans was all just surreal, and the experience was very moving, and it almost felt like being there again, but for real. And I think all of us were, there's just this sort of silence that was going on before us there. And
in the Boyjack.
Correct. So it was that you know, and Mark and I have been talking about where we wonder if I would have felt that prior to filming, because I didn't have the experience, and I felt having gone through Band of Brothers and then being there, whether it was more powerful in that sense. And I feel it was, because I know so much more about them personally.
Alors, quand ils ont été invités à Bastogne en 2016, il dit ça a été un moment fort, car d'être dans cette forêt de Bois-Jacques, il a ressenti un silence profond, une émotion, et c'est quelque chose qui se pose la question si ça n'aurait pas été mieux peut-être d'y être allé avant le tournage, ou après. Finalement, ils y sont allés après, donc il se pose la question si c'est... Maintenant qu'il connaît plus sur le Bois-Jacques, cette atmosphère, si ça aurait rajouté quelque chose à son rôle.
Anybody else want to tackle that one as well?
I mean, something that struck me, and this is my first time in Normandy, I suppose for the French in the audience, I mean, something that's struck me is this probably never impacted me before, which is just the fact that, you know, France was occupied. I mean, it's so obvious, but you know, England wasn't occupied, and we don't have that in our, you know, in our culture, in the sense that on a yearly basis where we go back and revisit the fact that that our country was liberated. And just coming here today and seeing, you know, what's happening in the square in the town, and seeing that, you know, the veterans back here and being thanked for what they did is very moving. It's you know, brings it home to you just how visceral and how real this all is.
Donc finalement, ils disent
What has that experience been like for you? Did your butt start to ache walking in the field there? Du WWII,
alors Nick, tu as pris une balle dans le derrière à Brécourt. Alors est-ce que quand tu retournes à Brécourt, tu ressens ce petit instant?
Do you want to see it?
Please. Later on.
Yeah, it just brings it home, doesn't it? Like Pete just said, it's great going. I mean, every one of us has got certain parts of Europe that are kind of reflective to, you know, our characters and what our guys went through. So there's a place somewhere, whether it'll be in Normandy, whether it's, you know, in Holland, Belgium. There's a spot somewhere in Europe that you want to see, but has a strange effect on you. But it's an itch you have to scratch. You've got to go and see it. So you break over, you know. Of course you want to see it, of course. But it's unusual why you want to see it. Does that make sense? You know, it's not a tourist attraction for me, but it's something I needed. I felt out of respect, you know, need to have a look at. Just out of respect for Popeye and what he went through. And it's the same with any of the guys, you know. There's a spot somewhere in Europe that has a real profound meaning. But yeah, like Pete said, coming to Normandy, going to Bastogne, going to these places where you just see the love that is shown and the mutual respect. It just brings it home that, you know, there's no words that you know that you can express gratitude basically for the town that you're visiting and for the people that fought there and who were there under occupation. So it's great coming, seeing all this going on out behind us, you know. That's it really. So yeah, Breakout was good for me.
Alors voilà, c'est sûr que pour
Tie in Ed Tipper with where Ed had his defining moment, really, of the war. We'd like to take a few more questions. Everyone, you know, you've been super. We could be here actually, I think, for the next 16 hours and still. Maybe we should go back and start with the Toccoa episode. Let's start working on that. We'll take a few final questions. So why don't we pick the last 3 questions? And yes, right here.
Yeah, I'll be brief so we can make room for more questions as well. But as a military member of the branch that was born in 1947, I want to thank all of you for your service and your portrayal. It's very important to me. I don't know if you can say a greatest film is a miniseries, but I always like to say this is the greatest film that you all were able to put together. So thank you very much for what you've done. So thank you. That's absolutely a warm-up for a pitch. So the pitch here is, as a member of that service, I've met some of the members that actually dropped on June 6th from the airlifter perspective. So can you maybe give some insight to what Hollywood has talked about for the mobility air forces? So Combat Air Force's Combat 82nd Airborne is a very easy story to tell. Has anyone given any thought to telling the air mobility side of the story?
Dale? Yeah. Dale is our pitch guy tonight. With all proposals afterwards, please bring them up to Dale.
Here's the thing about Air Force stories. They're ludicrously expensive. There is a follow-on HBO miniseries Provinces of the Air, which is about the mighty eighth, B-17s. That has been in the works at HBO for about 5 years now. The problem is, they write the scripts and they submit them to HBO, and the HBO does what bean counters do. They budget them out, and it comes to $350 million or something like that. And they say, no, we can't do that. Take it back and rewrite it. And they take it back and rewrite it, and it sucks. So I don't know whether that one's ever going to get done. There is a new Top Gun coming out, that's Fighter Jocks, and Tom Cruise is going to resurrect that role. And that's Navy Air too, anyway. So I don't really know. All I can tell you is that it's exciting. If you're inside an aircraft, if there's more than a pilot and a co-pilot, and you've got an air crew, that's a perfect stage. And it's an exciting sort of story to try to tell, but it's ridiculously expensive, and I don't know if you're going to see a lot.
Eric?
Much like Doug Spain's question earlier, but back at all of you, I'm curious to know how many times you've all gone back and watched the series, or also, if you want to answer, if you've got one specific episode that is your favorite or you love to watch over and over again.
Alors la question est pour les acteurs. Combien de fois est-ce que vous avez regardé la série? Et si oui, quel épisode est celle que vous avez le plus?
Well, personally, I love episode 3 because it's the one I'm the most in. what I really want to know is what is Tim Matthews' favourite episode?
Sorry? I didn't hear the question, I've never seen it.
That's true.
What?
Yeah. Please carry on.
He finds it too emotional, that's why he doesn't.
Oh, yeah. I've watched it a couple of times. I watch it with my grandfather now and again. But we're lucky because it's shown on TV in the UK quite a lot, actually. So every now and again I'll catch an episode and start crying because it's so emotional. Just like reminisce and remember things. And it just never gets old. Favorite episode? I don't know. I don't have a favorite episode of the most. Each episode has a different meaning for me and personally, and sort of, I don't know about the other guys, but actually watching it is probably a different experience to just you guys watching it, because you sort of remember where you were and what happened on that day and that scene and how you got so it's a different type of watch really, but it's difficult to watch it as a show. I know it's an amazing show, but it's difficult to watch it. Anyone else?
Eric? Donc finalement, pour Bart, son épisode préféré c'est le 3e, donc épisode 40 ans. Tim, non, t'as jamais vu, non. Et pour Phil, c'est c'est difficile de regarder l'émission pour Phil, donc il l'a regardé une couple de fois avec son grand-père. Il dit que ça joue quand même assez souvent sur les télévisions anglaises. Mais il dit pour lui c'est plus émotionnel parce qu'il ne regarde pas ça en tant qu'une émission, mais plus comme une période de sa vie. Il se souvient où il était, qu'est-ce qu'il faisait, donc c'est fort. Il dit que tout le monde doit avoir des expériences un peu similaires. Voilà.
Anybody else want to tackle that one before we get ready to wrap things up? Doug?
I've seen the entire series once. It was the year it came out. We had a premiere at one of the actors' houses, and we would watch that episode. But it stalled because 9/11 happened. So I think it was off the air for about a month or so before it came back. And then we all got together again and watched it through. And then I've seen episodes 1 and 2 maybe about 3 or 4 times. I've seen episode 4 many times.
Why is that, Doug?
I really enjoyed working with David Nutter, and I got to work with him again. And also, when I was doing my tape, I had to watch a lot of it, and I used a lot of that in my demo reel as an actor back in the day. And it's actually one of the best episodes.
Donc finalement, il a vu la série en complet rien qu'une fois. Ils se sont mis ensemble quand c'est sorti. Ils se sont tous retrouvés chez un des acteurs pour voir la première. Et malheureusement, ça a été interrompu à cause des événements du 9 septembre. Et après, un mois plus tard, une fois qu'ils ont recommencé à montrer les épisodes, ils se sont mis ensemble. Mais effectivement, son épisode préféré, c'est la 4. On ne sait pas pourquoi. Mais qui s'en est servi un peu, il a vu les 3 premiers épisodes, mais la 4, il s'en est servi plusieurs fois pour faire son démo reel, son démo en tant que comédien. Ah oui, c'est le meilleur épisode, la 4.
Before we wrap it up, we have one final question from the crowd. The gentleman to my right, who is known across the world as the top Battle of the Bulge historian alive today and tour guide. If you ever want to go to the Battle of the Bulge, Reg Jans right here on my right is that person that you want to talk to. We just finished our 20th documentary on World War II, and it was on the Normandy massacre, and Reg was the historian for that. So you're not going to ask a stupid question now, are you?
I never asked.
You never asked. They're only stupid answers, right? Questions are always good. Why don't you go ahead?
Well, I have this one to wrap things up here, and this goes to the British actors and Mr. McCallum, all being professional actors, but especially in the Band of Brothers, you guys play American soldiers, so you had to practice your American accent. You have to lose your British accent and learn to speak on American talks. You're professionals, but how did you prepare for that? How did you go stand in front of the mirror and you practice? Or Mr. McCallum, you've been playing a lot of series that were made for the United States and all over, so sometimes I assume you had to try to get rid of the British accent. So how did you prepare for that? Now, to the British actors, I would like maybe to ask if you could demonstrate how good you are at it and let the audience decide.
Especially Popeye.
Anyway.
Well, hold on. We'll do McCallum first.
You want to translate that one real quickly?
Yeah, okay.
Translate that one really quickly.
D'accord, alors c'est plutôt pour les acteurs qui nous viennent de la Grande-Bretagne et bien sûr de l'Irlande, parce qu'on est Irish. Ils ont joué des personnages qui sont américains. Alors, comment ils ont fait pour changer de leur accent américain à un accent anglais à un accent américain? Et Dale McCallum, bien sûr, qui a joué dans beaucoup de séries, qui joue souvent en américain. Comment ils font pour se transformer et s'ils peuvent nous donner une petite démonstration de leur meilleur accent américain?
If you're going to have demonstrations of how these actors work, you're going to have to pay them. As far as I'm concerned, I've done it once. I did a series with Dustin Hoffman and other people a long time ago, all about the OSS, and I played an American captain, and my accent was atrocious.
D'accord. Alors, si on veut que les acteurs fassent des accents américains, il va falloir les payer. Dale McCallum n'a fait l'accent américain qu'une fois dans sa carrière, quand il avait joué avec Dustin Hoffman, et apparemment son accent américain n'était pas bon du tout. Alors voilà. Alors pour les autres, accent américain, American accent, having to...
Mark, you want to take that one since you have Irish, and then we'll ask Tim Matthews about it as well.
Yeah, we were very late last night talking about the show, so I've got a few ideas for a few questions coming at me right now. Just take a while.
Yeah, sure.
But and they kind of all tie into each other because even your question about going to visit places, I think a lot of things happen on the show in reverse. Like I couldn't go to boot camp, that was important because Hash didn't go to boot camp. And it's funny because in a few modern jobs you work on, and Dale was talking about in terms of future films, the percentage CGI on set is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. In 2000, when we made this show, there were so many days that if you were drugged and put on set and woken up, you wouldn't know that you weren't on a set. There were days in the forest, there were days on the dike, and there were days when veterans came to visit the set and said it was exactly the same as they remembered. And when you're trying to be an actor and tell the truth and convince yourself of something, and there are 10 or 15 actual American actors around you, and then everyone else is speaking an American accent, and there are so few things stopping you believing what you're trying to do that it's impossible not to believe it. And so, the accent being one thing, but all of those elements, and then you have the best costume designers in the world, the best set designers in the world, working on the show. But there were days that you blur the lines, or in the sequences you forget that this wasn't even real. There's only so far you can go. But so many of the elements were there, and the best people possible to put them into place. We just reacted to what we saw. That was literally the case. And like I say, there was a core element of American actors. There was a natural speaking voice that we probably without even realizing were taken from as well. And that definitely helped. And I think Arthur would do an American accent better than English, but that's
effectivement, pendant qu'ils ont tourné, ils étaient tellement fatigués avec les coups de camp, ils étaient mis.
World War II generation meant to the history of the world. What was their impact? And I want you to try and do it each in one sentence, and Eric will translate in rapid fashion. So Dale, we'll start with you. When you think of that generation, what comes to mind first?
What comes to mind is my freedom and my liberty to live the life that I've been blessed to live. Had it not been for those individuals who served and sacrificed, we would be a much different and much poorer place.
Alors, un petit mot, juste pour dire, on demande une question à tous les acteurs. Qu'est-ce que la génération de la Deuxième Guerre mondiale nous a donné? Et Dale a répondu, ma liberté et ma liberté. Donc, si ce n'était pas pour cette génération qui a donné et sacrifié, on serait dans un monde beaucoup plus beau aujourd'hui.
Peter?
I would say the right to live one's life free from tyranny and to follow one's dreams without being forced to adhere to somebody else's abhorrent views and opinions.
Alors, c'est d'être libre de suivre ses rêves sans être forcé à suivre les règles ou les opinions d'un autre.
Mark?
I would say that at a time when we were faced with one of the most scary, frightening, and threatening regimes ever, we were lucky enough to have a generation of people that were brave, good, and strong enough to quash it.
À une époque où on a fait face à un des régimes les plus effrayants de notre histoire, on a eu la chance aussi d'avoir cette génération qui a eu le courage de les combattre.
I can only wish that a bigger percentage of Americans, and especially the new generation of Americans, can experience and understand the depth in which these men sacrificed so much for everything that they and we have, and that we cannot any longer take it for granted.
Il souhaiterait que tout jeune Américain aujourd'hui voit et apprécie ce que tous ces jeunes Américains des années 40 ont sacrifié pour nous donner ce qu'on a aujourd'hui.
Philippe?
I feel incredibly lucky to be here today and to, be able to live my life. Thanks to those men and women who fought for us, and I just hope that the generations for the future will understand what these people went through, and we need to keep telling these stories.
Nick?
For me, it's just basically an immensely overwhelming level of respect and gratitude.
Le respect, la gratitude, le remerciement, on espère que les générations futures vont apprécier le sacrifice de ces hommes.
I get very angry that it happened, very, very angry that it happened, and that these things continue to happen. I'm very sad about it, and yes, I have an immense amount of respect for everybody who endured that period in history, who are actively involved in the war or not. Just horrific.
Alors, il est fâché que ça a dû se produire et que ça se produit encore, mais effectivement, beaucoup de respect à tous ces hommes et femmes qui ont donné le tout pour que ça se termine.
I'm always in constant awe of the courage shown by all the men that served in all the wars and how they managed to overcome all the hardship and did so much for so many people.
Christian. Toujours impressionné par le courage que ces hommes et ces femmes ont démontré à l'époque.
Basically, I think my thoughts are the same as everyone before me. There's not a lot more I can say. I feel exactly the same. I'm lucky enough to be paid to travel all over the world, and I'm able to travel to all the countries around the world freely. I just feel so lucky that I'm able to live the life that I can, to be here with you guys now. I just hope that it all continues with what's going on in the world today. Thank you.
Alors voilà, très chanceux d'être capable de voyager dans tous ces pays grâce à cette génération et qui espère que ça va continuer malgré la situation aujourd'hui.
Yesterday we were at the Pegasus bit.
This shit we have to gonna go through.
That's so sweet.
So, you have to pay the British, but you want Americans to do it for free? Thanks a million, that's, I can't even get it. Bloody hell, what are you doing here? Let's go eat.
That's a hard act to follow. But, I want to thank everybody tonight, and especially, the World War II Foundation in 2012 dedicated the Richard Winters Leadership Monument over in St. Marie-du-Mont, and we dedicated that monument on a chilly, cold, kind of a rainy day, which was kind of like D-Day was. And there, Governor Tom Ridge, who was the first Homeland Security Director for the United States, spoke, and he referred to our translator as unflappable, Eric LeBoeuf. And he is unflappable. So I want to give a round of applause to Eric. When the Secretary of Homeland Security calls you unflappable, then you know that you've got a free pass to come to the United States and do the hell whatever you want to do. I mean, you can say Tom Ridge sent me. He says I'm unflappable. Yes, you do. You've taken advantage of it many times, but we won't. That's a different story. So, I'm sorry?
Translation for unflappable. It's been 6 years.
Unflappable.
No. Unflappable. That afternoon I came up with it was inébranlable. Yes.
Oh dear.
Since we're talking about Eric, and it is June, it is his birthday month, so everybody can sing with me. Here we go.
Eric, translate this, please.
Happy
birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Bless the men who are out in the square, and the men who came to our event last night, those 96-year-old, 97-year-old, 98-year-old men who stayed late last night and wanted to be a part of this. And for a lot of them, it's their last go around, and they're soaking it in a little bit. And I don't mean in a conceited way, I mean in a humble way, because they know that the final chapter is being written right now for them, and they want to say thank you to you for having an interest. So thank you to all of you, and have a great night. Thank you for coming.
Do something. Okay, then never mind. We just come out with the Band of Brothers Q&A, which was awesome. I